Welcome to the Akili podcast.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, happy birthday, happy anniversary. I know you're listening to me from a different time zone, a different reality, and I would love to welcome you to this podcast. This is the first episode, and I'm super proud to have you on board. So, my name is Wamboi Kinywa. And this podcast, actually, I've dedicated it for us to get to know each other. I would love you guys to DM me if you can. I would love to know all of you guys because I really love to know and I love stories. One of the reasons I am doing this podcast actually is because I really, really, really love stories and I enjoy stories. So people are going to be coming to this podcast to share stories with me and with you for sure. So I hope you really love stories just like me, because here is one for you. So first things first, before I go to the story, I would love to talk about why we call you a guru, or why I'm calling you a guru, and why I'm calling myself a guru. Because advice or information or intelligence has to come from within. You can never trust anyone from the outside of yourself to bring inside foreign information that you're going to trust 100%. You have to trust only yourself. And you have to get to that level of trust with yourself. And I think for most people, it's the hardest thing to get to, right? You have to understand that this is a wavelength we are getting you into. Like, we are going to get inside a wave, right? We're in the ocean and we're going to get you with our wave, right? I also happen to know a lot of amazing people who are doing amazing things. So I will bring in people to help us understand their wave. And maybe we can catch one thing or another. But at the end of the day, you are your own guru. You have to make sure at the end of the day, when people are coming in to tell you anything, you are the one who decides what comes inside. I love to learn a lot of things. And for me, I think the fact that I learn a lot of things, I also unlearn a lot of things. So you have to understand, you will get into that space. You will get into the space where you feel like people are telling you how to do things, but that's not the point. The point is for you to identify the things that are relating with you the most, that you can carry some, only some. Don't carry everything. Always understand that you are a version of God, and you are the one who is the most important element on this planet. Without you, you will not be able to experience anything else. So with that, I'm going to go into my story. So I'm from a very small village called Morindoko. I know that has been a joke around my friends for a while now, but that area is where I grew up. I've been brought up by two parents, very loving parents, and of course, who were able to give me tough love when they needed to. And of course, I was a very mischievous child. For anyone who knows me will understand this. And I had a curfew, of course, because I used to walk to school. And my mom used to have to beat me a lot because of the fact that I would want to go and socialize too much with my friends. So I will go, if guys are riding bikes, me, I'm there just watching people. And then, of course, after that, we'll go and watch Teletubbies at my friend's house, Kina Doreen. Wow, my mom. So we will even do the thing with a string where I will just tie the knots on a string, one long string, and just put it on the doorstep. If my mom steps on that string, I know I'm done for. It was just like a myth for me. And my mom never went easy on the strokes. Yani, I was pigward. It was a crazy childhood, to be honest. Because for me, I have been a very curious person. Until today, I'm a very curious person. So I always want to know. And every day, I want to know more. So fast forward, I came from primary school, went into high school. I had a couple of issues, of course, with my teachers because of my nature of curiosity and also for being able to understand what my rights are. But at the same time, I think that was one of the hardest times of my life when I was in school because honestly, I was bullied. And I was bullied a lot. And this came from nursery to kindergarten to class 1 to class 2, class 3, class 4, and all the way into high school. And when I was in high school, it was actually the worst situation because I could not understand why this is happening to me. And at the same time, that's when I was hitting puberty. So for me, I was like, why? Why am I going through this? Is it that people hate me or what is happening? Like for me, it was quite tough. So the situation was quite dire for me, and I remember at some point that at that point I was in boarding school, and fortunately or unfortunately, I had to move school for other reasons. I used to have actually a heart condition, which made me have to go to a day school, right? And for me, I was actually lucky for that because I was not as bullied. Actually, it was much less when I was in day school. And at least I was able to go home and cry with my mom. And also, I think at the day school, I was able to connect with the people more, and we were actually authentic friends. And when I was in high school, actually, that time when I got to day school is when I started questioning religion. And at that time, I had a best friend who was an Indian. So I'm trying to let you know now my philosophy and how I got to where I am and why. So my best friend was an Indian, right? And he was called Pranav. So shout out if he ever gets to listen to this podcast. And I really loved him a lot. And at that time, I was actually very born again. I was very born again. And my mom is a preacher. She's a lay leader, right? And I used to go to church and be told that preach to the Gentiles. Because if you don't preach to the Gentiles, they are going to burn in hell and they're going to burn forever. I had such a traumatizing moment one of the days, just a random day, when I realized that, oh my God, my best friend is actually an Indian and he's a Hindu. I don't want him to burn in hell forever. So I actually sat him down and preached to him. I was like, you know what, Pranav? I sat him down one of the break times. We just went out and sat together. And I told him, do you know that if you don't ascribe to Christianity, that you're going to burn in hell? And we had a conversation where he actually opened my mind to something else that I had never thought about at that time. I remember it very vividly because he said a couple of things. Number one, he asked me, do you know that the only reason you're a Christian is because you were born as a Christian? The fact that your grandmother, your grandfather, your mother, and your father are Christian is the only reason you're Christian. And the only reason I am a Hindu is because my grandfather, my father, my mother are both Hindu. And I will ascribe to the religion of that they have told me to follow. And I think it was at that point I knew I fucked up. Okay, I'm just kidding. But that's the moment where I came to the realization that, oh my God, I can't be imposing religion on someone else. And at the same time, I started asking myself, because now I had like a bit of a vortex. I got into a vortex. I was lost there for a minute because I kept asking myself, we are always taught that God is God of love. why is the God of love going to punish people out of things they do innocently? And I think for me, that was the beginning of the end of my Christian journey, because I just could not understand how God of love will be so merciless to just punish people out of what they believe. So after that, I went into campus, and of course, I was still a Christian for a very long time. But at the same time, I used to keep on questioning. I was never of the fixation that I need to only be a Christian. And I think that's also when I started disengaging from church, because also I saw so many faulty lines with the Christian religion. So I got into campus, and for me, how I got into campus was that my dad was so tired of me sitting on the couch. I used to just sit on the couch and watch a lot of TV. And to some point, we used to actually fight with my dad, because I'm like, Dad, do not watch cartoon. And Dad is like, no, it's my TV. So I did driving school, I did computer school, and I used to do it like every day together. So in the morning, I do driving, in the afternoon, I do computer classes. So I was able to finish very fast. So the minute I was done, I did. My dad actually got to my case, and he was like, there's no way you're going to be just sitting down on this couch. This is what you're going to do. You and your mom are going to go to Nairobi University, because it's a trusted school of education, and you're going to go and get a class or a course that you can get into. And once you get into the course, you'll be able now to you'll be able to progress from that until you get your results. So yeah, me and my mom, we went together to Nairobi University. We went to the extramural department, because that's where they have short courses. And I decided, because I had decided that I wanted to do IT, but I decided that I was going to do PR, because IT will easily be facilitated by PR, because any career needs communication. For you to be able to understand how to interact when doing business, you actually need to have communication skills, and strong communication skills at that, if you want to be prosperous, right? So yeah, I did the course. And during that course, by the way, it was so boring, because I thought we just listening to the most redundant music. We used to listen to the music that has been sung since, I don't know, 1994. That's the only thing that we used to avail ourselves to. That's the only thing that I used to listen to since I started going out. And I only started going out after I got into campus, right? Because when I was at home, no one would ever allow me to go out. So I just realized that it was just the same old shit, and I just decided not to go out partying as much. At that time, I was also exploring what love was, because that's when I got my first love. And it was such a strange but awesome experience at the same time. I will always remember it with a lot of fondness, because I think it set the pace for how my relationship for the rest of my life have been going. I think it was very respectful. The person was also new into this love thing as well, and we explored as much as we could at the time. And as soon as I was done with that, I was supposed to remember, when I was in high school, I had decided I was going to do IT. But the minute I got into PR, I was like, oh my God, this is a place where I am paid to talk and be who I am. I think I just threw out the idea of doing IT altogether, and I decided to stick to PR. So I decided to do a degree. Actually, I did a double major in development communication and journalism and mass communication. So this was me now. I am inside the University of Nairobi still doing a degree. And I think after the first semester, maybe the fourth, like around year 2, the second year now of my degree, I was able to come across a party. And this party, I was actually introduced by my second boyfriend, who I think I dated for only 6 months because he was leaving the country soon. So we decided just to be boyfriend and girlfriend to have fun together at the time. The idea was actually for us to be together for a longer period of time. But the minute you get, like, when the person went away, far away, we knew that it could not be a thing anymore. And he's the one actually who introduced me to this party, right? It was actually by Electra Freak DJs. I don't know anyone who has ever heard of those guys. They were actually the people who started the house music movement at that time. So that was me and this guy who we went to this underground party, and trust me, that was the first day of the rest of my life. That was the best party that I ever went to when I was in campus. And that night, I was certain that I wanted to do something of the sort. So actually, I just asked this guy, do you know the person who does this event? And he actually introduced me to him. And I went, told the guy, by the way, I am in campus and I would love to volunteer myself to you to help you in all your logistics, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, you know what? Yeah, come on board. Let me get your number. We'll talk and you can assist me in where you can. So like that, it was Muthrucation. And we did Muthrucation for a minute. But I think in the 3rd month, he hollered at me, the guy, and he told me, yo, there's actually a slot that is open at a company that I am curating. It's called Santuri East Africa. Would you like to apply for it? This is how it's being applied for. I was like, yeah, for sure. So I just applied to this thing called Santuri East Africa that was about DJs who moved around in East African festivals to record and perform music. And I got in, for sure. And it gave me access to all the happiness and joy I could ever get. I think that was the best time of my life, to be honest, till today, because at that time I didn't even have any responsibilities. My dad at the time sorted out my rent, and Santuri East Africa was gracious enough to pay me a stipend. So I was able to channel all the money that I was getting into going out and being able to camp out and stay at the festivals that we were going to perform at. If I needed some extra days, I was able to organize for myself. I didn't have to ask my dad for anything. And that's how I actually landed myself into Creative's Garage. And I met them when I was working with them. I was working from their office with Santuri East Africa because we did Sondeka festival with them. And it was a very fulfilling job because I just saw the passion that was in the people who we were working with. There's so many things that came into that work experience because number one thing that I can tell you for sure that I remember so vividly that I was able to learn was that I have to be there before my boss gets there. You know, mimi nimekuja from a point of understanding. My dad is usually a very serious English timer, if I may call it. And he usually gets to a place at the time that he's supposed to get there. If you say that we're supposed to be there by 6 a.m., he'll be there by 6 a.m. Tutakuja hapo, for example, it's a trip for school, and we are supposed to be there by 6 a.m. Watu wengine wakichelewa, we'll just be freezing like popsicles, waiting for those other parents to get there with their kids. And that's how, for me, I have grown up knowing. But when I started working for David Tenney, I understood one thing. David Tenney gets there in front of time, like ahead of time. He'll be there 5 minutes before time. And the whole time you'll be like, how is my boss here before me? As in, I felt so embarrassed, Yani. I'm just like, I can't dare have this happen again. And it became a culture for me that each time I have to go somewhere, I have to be there in advance, early in advance. And I got to meet other people who I could not have met if it was not for Santuri East Africa. I went to the best East African festivals, actually. I was able to go to Bayimba International Festival. I was able to go to the Rift Valley Festival. I think I'm so sad that it's already gone, that it'll never come back. I was able to go to Nyege Nyege. I was able to go to Sauti za Busara. And through all that, I was able to meet such amazing human beings. I was able to work with the top layer musicians of East Africa. We worked with Macadam. We worked with Eid Aziz. I worked with Sarabi East Africa when they were Sarabi East Africa, and many, many more. And after that, the contract ended, right? And I was able to get another contract with the Goethe Institute. When I worked with the Goethe Institute, I was a consultant for the cultural department. So my job was to actually more or less be able to advise them on the people to work with on the Kenyan market. At the same time, I was able to assist the cultural coordinator, project coordinator at the time, who was Francisca. And I worked 2 days a week, you guys. I worked 2 days a week on a very good salary. And another one, that was another very good time because I was able to explore and go on camping trips and raundi too, because me Akini napenda raundi sana. So after that, actually, it ended. That was in 2016. It ended. The contract ended, and it ended in December. So in January 2017, I started working for a music studio at the Alchemist. We were the ones who actually, we were the first pioneers to be doing events at the Alchemist. I did the events with Muthuru Kishan and Weibo Culture, and I also did them now with ADA Creative Studios, which was actually the source of the Muse. That was a beginning for the Muse to happen, right? So I worked with these guys for a long time, and that also ended in 2017 December, around 2017 December. And after that, I got to understand something about myself. I wanted to leave a mark in this continent. But I used to ask myself all the time, like, how does a grain of sand make the difference for a whole ocean? And I came to the realization that you have to start somewhere. So you start with yourself. And when you start with yourself, you change the grain of sand right next to you. And then after that, you get to the, it will have a ripple effect. So I decided that I was going to do all the awesome things that I could do on my own. And that's when I started my first company, right? My first company was called To Get FM, To Get.fm. And it was actually for music and musicians to ascribe to be able to understand how many times their music has been played on radio, TV. We were going to give them receipts, actually. And it's still not been actualized. And I feel like maybe one of these days I'll be able to actualize it, because the minute I understand how to make everything I'm doing right now, I'll be able to work on the things that I have abandoned from before. And that also fell down because I got sick in 2018 in January. I had the biggest brush with mental illness. And that was in January. Actually, we went out for my birthday and I was unable to sleep. The one thing that people treat with so much ignorance, like it's going to be there tonight and tomorrow and the next day after tomorrow. At that time, I didn't have any sleep whatsoever. And I remember that each time I didn't sleep for a day, I used to unlock my brain somehow. Like I felt like I was tapping into some juice I never get into. So each time I will always make sure I am not sleeping. I'm just like, I want to write more. So I used to write, scribble, type things that I felt like were amazing in the world, blah, blah, blah. And it got to a point that on the 5th day, I think actually it was the 4th day, that it all broke apart. That my consciousness was unable to maintain sanity. And this is when I was diagnosed with bipolar, because I had mania. So I was lost, actually. I was lost for, let's say, a day. For a day, I couldn't account for where I was because I gave everything away. I am such an empath and I am too kind. And I actually came to find out that this was the reason why I was bullied a lot. because people love people who will be so kind, because they will always want to take advantage, because everyone is in it for their best interest. And this was, you guys talk about crazy, but I was crazy. I was legit crazy. And I went out in the streets. I was preaching. I was just talking to people, because I just unlocked some other level of my brain that now it was, unajua, danger zone. Ile place yenye unaambiwa, do not go beyond this point. That time I went beyond that point. And let me tell you, for sure, I will be told that I was sick, that I was mentally ill. But let me tell you also something else, that it's like something else took over me. I was looking at myself from the outside, and I was seeing myself preaching about things that I have never myself thought or contemplated, that I never read in books. I was just talking, and I was able to understand that there are people who used to know me, who came to me to tell me, Wambui, by the way, do you know I was with you that day? I was with you this day, and you are in a matatu and you're preaching. And I actually aligned, because I was asking them, did I speak any sense to you? And they were like, yeah, you spoke a lot of sense, but you didn't recognize me. So that's the only way I knew that there was a problem, right? And they tried maybe to rescue me, and wakienda kushukama 3, like they wanted to get my friend, actually a specific friend called Maureen. She wanted to get her mom to get me because she was going to work. But at the time she was going to get her mom, because she had just dropped her off, the mat had already gone, right? So there's a couple of stories like those I was told about afterwards. And I remember that the end of the episode was that I went and took myself to a police station, because I thought it was the safest place I could be. I was actually in Nairobi somewhere, right? And that was the first time actually I was ever in a police station, like chilling, right? And my cousin is the one who found me, because now my parents had been told that my phone is being picked by someone who they don't know. I had already given away my phone, my bags, my money, everything. And my cousin found me, and he was able to take me to my parents' home. Because he even told me, I remember we were having a conversation, and he asked me, Wambui, don't you want to take a shower? And I was like, no, I want to go to my mom and my dad. And he took me all the way home, and it was a process of understanding that, first of all, you need to know that my mom is a nurse. So the first thing she did, because now she's in the medical industry, was that she took me to the psychiatrist, and nikaandikiwa madawa zingine hapo mingi. Wow. I had injections. I don't know, like 3 injections. I had like 5 tablets, pills that I had to take. And especially because my mom couldn't trust the outside, I was also put on the HIV one, the PEP, just in case I was in contact with people. But I was trying to tell her that I knew what I was doing at that time, and I'm conscious of what happened, the whole story, but she didn't trust that that could happen, right? And it was such a struggle, because that was actually also another very happy time of my life, because at that time I did not even care about any repercussions. I just did things because I felt I wanted to do them. But then again, there's another side of my mom where my mom believes that Jesus is the only way out, and anything else apart from Jesus is not okay. So they were actually asking me whether I got into a cult when I came into Nairobi, and they even took me into a place where I was prayed for. And I'm telling you, I was prayed for Zileza, like I am in the middle of a big crowd that is like hailing words and words over me. And I can't forget that I remember at some point I kept telling them, you guys are just frustrating me, because they were not understanding that I know I love God, and I'm not saying I don't love God, but there are things that I can't allow myself to get to anymore. It was my awakening. This was my awakening for sure, because I got to a higher understanding of what the universe was. I was like, I can't even explain to you, by the way. The biggest problem came now during that time when I was being pumped so much drugs, medicinal drugs, yes, but they were drugs regardless. And I'm telling you, I'm going to tell you this. This is a bit TMI if you want to reduce the volume. But my underwear used to be burnt, literally burnt, like acid. All the underwears I used to wear in 2018, right now I cannot ever, I don't even want to look at them because they just take me back into darkness. I was put on mood dampeners because what I was told was that my euphoria was on a very high level, and I was put on mood dampeners. And I'm telling you, those mood dampeners, after maybe a week or two, I was completely and utterly depressed. I don't know whether there's anyone who's ever been depressed before who's listening to us, but you know exactly what depression is. I had a year. Let me give you a year, more or less. A year of death. I was actually dead. I was a walking zombie. My eyes were awake. I could see people, but the thing that makes me alive, the thing that makes me happy, the thing that, I don't know, my heart beats. Because there's a mechanical heart, and then there's a super, I don't know what to call it. It is of the metaphysical realm. The heart of the metaphysical realm was completely on a flat line. The way I love to talk, I could not have a conversation with anyone. Anyone. Including my parents, my sisters, my sister, and even my friends. And the ones who came to visit me, by the way, and there was many of them, which I am so happy for. There was not many of them, actually. I'm kidding. There's like, let me say 10. At the palm of my hands, there was just 10 people who came to visit me in that year. And I was in a situation where life just was so meaningless. It was utterly meaningless. I just felt like I just wanted to sit and stay in bed. Being in bed already was, I felt so bad being in bed, but at the same time, it was the most reasonable thing that I could do, because being in bed, I didn't have to see anyone's face and see them smiling and feel like, oh my God, my smile would never come back. I will never have a genuine smile. At that time, my mom forced me to come with her. Not really forced me, but there was impositions, of course, that I should come with her for the, what are they called? Worship. I used to go for the worship periods they used to have. And I think it was once a week. And then they started doing, like, I got a lot of friends who are now my mother's age. Till today, when I go home, the people I go to visit is not my age mates, but my mom's age mates. They became more than friends. They became close to me. I will just actually go and ask them, like, if they've ever gone into such a process or they've ever been depressed. But honestly, most of them could not even connect. They could not understand what I'm going through. And it was actually the deepest, darkest place, because even afterwards, I kept thinking that I'm going to be stuck like this forever. The free Wamboi is no longer existing, and I'm going to be a dumb person who doesn't know anything. I was like, there was no one home. You know what I mean? Inside my brain, there was no one home. And I had this moment for a very long time, too long. And around September, actually, in August, I got a call. At the beginning of August, I got a call from one person who was my employer from before. He's called Greg. And I have so much I can say about him, right? But all I can say at the moment was that he became the main reason that I was able to come back to the city. Because at that time I had moved back home. And I moved back to the city, but I moved back to be a project manager, right, for his project, Weibo Culture. And after 1 month, to be honest, because I came back and started living with my cousin who was living where I used to live before. And I quit. After a month of being a project manager, I just quit because I felt like there's nothing I'm adding to this project. I'm just dead weight. And I even helped him. I was able to put out an advert for a job, and I even selected the person to be the project manager, and I became a volunteer. He called my mother actually and told him that they wanted to stay with me as a volunteer. And I'm gonna say thanks for this one, because honestly, it helped me get closer to normalcy. So I did robotic stuff though. That's all I could do. I could only be sent to do something. Like, you have to give me all the details of what I need to do, because I couldn't do anything for myself. I was dead. And I had two months, I think, after that, because that was in September. I quit after September. So November, December, and January, I worked with Weibo Culture. But after that, our paths parted. And it just got to a point that I wasn't able to work with them anymore. But that happened in February, and they gave me a paid leave. When they gave me a paid leave, I was able to get onto another project. Before the end of the month, actually, I started this new job with Afriduka, where I worked for my friends. I got it on the 20th of February. I'll never forget. And I had already told them in advance. I told them, you guys, you understand what you're getting. Because even with Greg, I had told him, you understand that I'm severely depressed. I have no sense of happiness or sense of direction, actually, for my life at the moment. I feel like nothing is worth it, but I'm going to try my best to do what you need me to do. And they promised me the same salary that Greg had promised me. And I was like, oh my God, that will be more than enough. Because my job was now just going to train people on the things that they wanted us to put out in the market. So we needed to build a community. So I was a trainer. The best part was that my friend Antonia is actually one of the best teachers I've ever met. And she's going to come on the podcast soon. So she was able to write down for me all the details of what I needed to tell everyone. And I was able to go and do the job. And I did this until not say exactly what, I felt internal. I went out, my mom said, yourself. And to be honest, afterwards, I also realized that it really sucks. It really, really sucks that you can't be getting that this is the most important thing that I can give back to the world. Is that grain of sand in the ocean. I want to change people around me in terms of their mental health and wellness. And it has taken building. Every day I am learning and unlearning. I am a sponge. I like to vision myself as a sponge. You have to understand what makes you happy. Because if there's one thing that I have I've come to learn, and with a lot of heaviness and weight, is that change is permanent. The only permanent thing in life is change. Your friends will change. The times you're in will change. Your clothes will change. Your cars will change. Everything will change. The people who are deciding to stay the same, trust me, they have a problem. Now that's what I call madness. Because you have decided to be in the same cycle forever and ever and ever. And let me tell you, cycles usually lose taste. And this is another thing I was saying earlier, that even art itself is a system. You have to learn how to get out of these systems we are in. Because the systems are everywhere, in everything. You have to learn yourself. You have to know yourself. The other thing I usually understand is that the more you know yourself, the more you know God. Because God is inside yourself. You are a version of God, as the religions say. I found that, honestly, when I was really looking at religions, I found that all religions are speaking about similar wavelengths. But the only problem is that they are trying to show you that if you go to this side, you are wrong, but in this side, you're right. But who is wrong and who is right? Everyone is wrong. You need to understand. You're the only one who is right. You, the person who is listening to this podcast, you who will go to attend Sunday Mass, you're the one who is right. Because everyone will do things and they can easily justify what they do. Thank you so much, you guys.
You are the first guru.